Welcome, everyone. Trust you can hear me very well. Just want to thank you for joining. It's an honor to have all of our resellers as well as many of our customers on this call. The outcome that we received was quite phenomenal, so thank you for that. Note that this webinar is being recorded, so should you require a copy of the recording, please reach out to your favorite account manager at CRS. We will also have most parts of the presentations available after the call. Tristan, just confirm that you can, in actual fact, hear what I'm saying.
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thank you. There's also a Q&A available at the end of the call, guys. So should you require any information, or if you'd like to share anything, post your questions in the chat box, and we will endeavor to answer the questions for you as quickly as possible. Note that your questions will only be visible to the hosts and not to everyone. So you will remain anonymous unless, of course, you add your name to the question of becoming famous. We start off with the agenda today with this opening, then intro to the speakers and to CRS, then moving over to Mr. Don Hockert, who will tell us a little more about REAQTA and what stands out at REAQTA. And then moving on to the main event, a demo session with Mr. Serge Woon. So by way of introduction, my name is Dylan Null. I'm the mean-looking guy on the screen at the moment. I've been in the cybersecurity space for close to a decade. I know most of the available vendors in SA fairly well, and most of the times on a personal level too. Just a little bit extra about myself, but I'm sure you can read more about me on all the social media posts that go out, so I'm not going to dive too much into that. Just note that I'm always looking to assist, and please take note of my contact details here should you not have them already. Speaking of good-looking gentlemen, though, introducing the first of our guest speakers, Mr. Don Hockert. Don is based in the Netherlands and looks after sales for REAQTA in the EMEA region. As you can see on your screen, Don boasts an intense amount of experience with various vendors, has worked in this region for many years. As you get to interact with Don in the future, you will see how much you can learn from every engagement with the man. Then moving on to Mr. Serge Woon, one of the founders of REAQTA. Serge strives to empower organizations with state-of-the-art cybersecurity solutions. He blazes the trail in replacing failing traditional cybersecurity technologies with groundbreaking approaches that offer unprecedented visibility and analytical capabilities. Serge will be covering ransomware detection and prevention, threat hunting, which includes things like unauthorized applications, and then hopefully, if there's some time, Destro, which is detection strategy. This is definitely someone you want in your corner when one of your smart devices or appliances get hacked. Why someone needs a smart toaster, I'm not really too sure. I've had a dumb toaster my whole life, and my toaster's always been pretty much perfect. So, look, jokes aside, please feel free to reach out to Serge, Don, or myself, or at the very least, follow us on social media. There's always something to learn from these guys. Moving on to a quick overview of CRS and why you are listening to me today. We are a cybersecurity distributor and an authorized IBM training center. Our head office is based in Centurion in South Africa, and we have training centers in Centurion, Midrand, and Cape Town. For IBM training, we operate in the SADC region as well as English-speaking Africa. We are also able to assist our partners with implementing and configuration of IBM cybersecurity and network solutions. We have over 15 years experience in the training field. Our training definitely allows organizations to internalize world-class vendors and ensures that your organization always has the right people working on your network. We get this right through our partnership with a company called Arrow ECS, which is one of IBM's global training providers. Through this partnership, CRS delivers authorized, definitely authorized training for the design, installation, maintenance, and troubleshooting of IBM technology such as hardware and storage. And this partnership also allows CRS to leverage the award-winning IBM technical training content that is exclusive to IBM's global training providers. We also have sole distributorship for EC Council Aware in this region. EC Council Aware, as many of you would know, changed the name from OFISH to Aware, and it's a cyber awareness training and phishing simulation tool that will safeguard your workforce from phishing attacks by showing the guys how to identify phishing scams out there at the moment. Beachhead is a cloud platform which allows companies to enforce encryption and access control on employee-used devices. So when a device goes missing or is in the hands of a disgruntled employee, this is definitely a solution that you would like to have deployed on your devices. So, guys, we will be doing webinars for all of our solutions moving forward, but now we will stick with REAQTA, which is definitely something that we enjoy working with. We also have in our solutions that does penetration testing for our resellers, as well as web app scanning and external vulnerability assessments. Just before handing over to Don, I'd just like to highlight the fact that REAQTA is well recognized by all the big players like Gartner, Frost & Sullivan, Forrester. This is definitely a solution that everyone should have, and I can safely say that traditional AV will soon be a thing of the past, and REAQTA is definitely the future. So in saying that, over to you, Don.
Thank you, Dylan. Of REAQTA, and to give you a better idea, indeed, myself, I have been with multiple vendors, as Dylan said, like McAfee, Mobile Iron, and Ivanti. So I've got an extensive knowledge, indeed, of South Africa, coming down there already for about 16 years. So I'm well aware of the local cybersecurity market. And a big fan of coming down there, so it's never a challenge. So in short, I'll tell you very short about REAQTA and why we are different and why you should look at our solution. And after this, you will get an extensive and live demo for what REAQTA does, and especially in the threat hunting area. So we are, as the slide says, we are a European, and that's a big difference from a lot of others. AI endpoint defense platform, also known as an EDR technology, we claim, and we like to call ourselves an ADR technology platform, meaning that we are an autonomous detection and response platform, and I will explain a little later why we do this. As indeed Dylan just showed you already, we've got many accolades from different kind of industry analysts. We were particularly proud of also the one of Gartner, the cool vendor, which is only handed out to 4 vendors last year. So that gives you really a good view. Also, because to counter the fact that we're not in the Magic Quadrant, and the reason for that being is we are very much present in Asia Pac, we are very much present in EMEA, but we are not present in North America, and that is something that you have to be if you want to be in a Magic Quadrant for that matter. So that's why you wouldn't find us there, but you can see with Gartner that they regard us as absolutely one of the best players in our space. Reason being that we make true use, and this has been acknowledged by all the vendors, of AI and machine learning technology that is integrated in our client, and that also really sets us apart because, as I said, REAQTA and Serge Woon being one of the founders and actually going to demonstrate this, this is a technology that has been created by the founders that have been on the other side, 15 years on the offensive side, and actually circumventing and said, out of a mission statement and mission themselves, it has to be done better than this. So they created the REAQTA solution, which is already out there in 2014. We are head office in Amsterdam for in general, but obviously Serge is based in our Singapore office, but also all the technology, the support and everything is also based in Amsterdam, which again for South Africa means that we are in exactly the same time zone. That also helps you a lot. The issue that we face, and that is happening, and that's where we see that we need to look into, is that nowadays, and I don't know by you guys, but here on this side of the globe, we almost on a daily basis get now news flashes that people have been hacked, held ransom, and lately here in the Netherlands we had actually shops not being able to deliver the right products because the people that deliver the products were hacked and they couldn't do anything. So the logistics system behind them. The things that they're facing is that they can't see what's going on. They can't do something about it, and therefore you're completely shut down. And there is in general a massive shortage of cybersecurity professionals. So there is a need to cover this and make it clear and make it available for everybody to deal with these advanced threats, but not having to have a massive team on your in your surroundings to deal with that. That's the mission. That's what REAQTA brings you. That what it gives you, and that something that you will see. We've got a highly developed automated technology that gives you, when trained, an average IT administrator can deal with this kind of advanced threats without knowing binary code. And that's also when it comes to an ROI and a threat efficiency, that's very much liked. So as I said, we're talking about the ADR technology, EDR, as a lot of people know these. And why are we doing this? Well, we now know that AV is just not doing the trick. And I always talk about this is a reactive kind of technology, because it always looks in the back mirror, because it looks for things that we already know. It needs a signature, it needs a pipe to go back to the library and say, okay, do we know this? Do we not know this? If we know it, it's bad. Okay, we block it. If we don't know it, that's about it. What can we do? Well, that's something these days you just cannot have anymore. It needs to be proactive, and proactive in a very broad sense. So that's something that REAQTA it will give you. It gives you the possibility to proactively hunt, and that's something that you will see, but also real live trigger and act immediately on any threats that are going on, because you need to be on top. But also knowing where does it come from, how did it get in there, and how can we prevent this from happening in the future. A lot of times also when we do demos, you see, yeah, but people ask, yeah, but is this all automated? Yes. When we do demos, we do it mainly in detection mode, because if we do it in protection mode, which is a full automated mode, all the things that we would think be automatically blocked. You are in real time protected in the most extensive way, and that's something that Surge will show you. On the other side is we are unique in a certain sense, and the next slide will show you that. So we do claim if you use our solution, AV is not necessary, but we do also acknowledge that there's still a lot of investment done in legacy players, and therefore you want to stick to that as a customer. That's fine. We can work perfectly fine together with those technologies because we're the next layer up. Again, I don't want to say, and a lot of people are claiming this, and I've worked myself at McAfee, but I know that legacy players in general claim to have the same kind of technology. At the end, a lot of times it's a dressed up AV. We only have a small amount of true EDR players that really have proactive technology that can deal with the threats that we're talking about, and also leave far less input and imprint and burden on your endpoint, because that's another thing that always comes with those legacy players, and we really do not. So how does it look like? And there it comes, is the first mention of why we are different and why we can do the things that we do. One of the big differentiators is that we have a Nano OS. That's a patented piece of technology that makes us not depending on any existing OS. One of the bigger benefits of that one is that we actually have a broader and objective look inside, but also for the bad guys, it's very difficult to detect us and even more difficult to shut us down. That's unique to us. Hence, we also say we have a true ADR technology, autonomous detection and response, based also on the Nano OS. And again, we've got that AI component integrated in the client that is also in your endpoint. That also gives us something else that a lot of others don't have, that we are able to do it in the cloud, but also on premise. We collect that data, obviously, and because we got that AI concept, we do the behavioral analysis, but it's a full automated process. And then it goes to a very intuitive and easy to read, and that's something you will see Hive dashboard all the way on the right. This is what we do. This is what we can bring to you. And also, as you saw, the Midrand mapping structure. So that's something that is now used more and more within the cybersecurity sphere, especially the vendors. We keep that structure in a very easy and structured way. So you will find that structure back, and it makes therefore easy understandable also for people that are not hackers or cybersecurity analysts. And all the other aspects, as mentioned, are seen here. Why are we different? As I said, we have the Nano OS. We give you the advanced threat hunting, and a lot of things are automated in there. You don't have to think. You just plug and play and put it in there. As I said, also it's very we're hybrid. We are in the cloud, but also on premise. We can do even air-gapped environments. So once installed, you don't need to hook up every week or every day or even every month. It will run independently, and it will do the trick. As I said, it's not very intrusive, lightweight. It's a 0.3 CPU usage, more or less, and 20 MBs indeed of RAM. If we really work, it goes up to 46, but it's very light, way lighter than you know. And again, we are able to give you that analyst efficiency because the technology does the work for you. This is it for me. We go now to the real fun stuff, and that being the demo that Serge is going to give. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Thanks for that, Don. Much appreciated. Very insightful, obviously. And Mr. Woon, over to you, sir.
Hi, good afternoon to those in Asia, and for South Africans, good morning. So we're gonna do a simple demonstration on how the solution works, both in an air-gapped environment as well as a connected environment. So first off, let me just share my screen. So this is the victim machine that we're going to demonstrate the solution and how it works. So it's a Windows machine, as you can see, and I'm just going to disable the network card. And once I do that, practically we all know what's going to happen. It's the endpoint is totally disconnected from anywhere, including the server that's going to manage the solution, right? So if we're going to disable this network card now, we practically will not have access to anywhere else, and I only have one network card just to demonstrate. The endpoint is totally offline. We can see that there's a cross button down here. It says that's not connected to anywhere, and now the network card is totally disabled. So under such a circumstances where you may have situations like this, it is an air-gapped environment or even a closed network, or temporary, you just don't have the connection that you wish that you have. And in certain cases before the COVID and in the near future, when we're able to travel, this kind of situations will become very prevalent. When people are on the airplane, you will have airplane mode when you don't have any connection at all. And precisely during these times, you probably will want to do some of your own work, or maybe you have downloaded some games and you want to play with it during the time of isolation. So just let me just verify that the internet is totally gone. I don't have any connections to the internet now, and I should not have any results from Google if I do a test from the Google browser. Okay, so there's no internet, that's fine. And under such a circumstances, I'm just going to run a malware, which potentially could be something which the user downloaded before he bought on the flight, or go into this isolation mode, or just temporarily cut off from the internet. So this is the first application that we're going to run, and put, well, the name of the application just gives it away, but it could be a name as any application that you could be aligned to, like maybe it's a game or some kind of chat application. But in this case, when it is run, the REAQTA Hive agents automatically monitors the behaviors of every single process, and it tries to understand whether the process behaves in a malicious or suspicious way. And in case of this particular application, is a Maze ransomware. It behaves in the ransomware behavior where it tries to access certain files and try to encrypt them. So while it is on this, our AI engine, which doesn't require any kind of updates or upgrades, will automatically detect such a threat. And because it is a high impact process, that potentially can encrypt your files, the ransomware engine automatically stops the process on its track. And there you will have a prompt that tell you that this application has violated a policy. And if you click OK, you can see that the files and everything still intact. There is no harm done. Even in an isolated environment when there's no connection to do any kind of update, there is no back-end cloud to reference to or signature database to reference to. So we're using AI engine that sits on the local machine to detect the threat and to block those threats if they're creating a high impact to the endpoint. So the next moment when you have access to the Hive server, this information will then be passed on and send it back to the Hive server, and you'll be able to understand that the endpoint has suffered from a threat. So when you go to the dashboard, this is the dashboard that we manage the solution. And if you just wait for a while, the data will be transferred to the dashboard, and you can see that the endpoint has suffered from a ransomware behavior attack. So you can see that there are 2 alerts. So this is actually an early stage warning. The detection strategy gives you an idea of a particular behavior that exhibits before the ransomware encryption. So if you look at this particular alert, there are some information on the right-hand side. This information gives you an idea of what is the trigger, the key activities, and also the endpoint information. If you click on the view alert, you will go into the alerts details page where most importantly, this is the behavioral tree that will give the analyst, all the information that he needs to solve the problem. So we can make it a full screen and just zoom in a little bit. You can see that the Maze ransomware actually started WMIC, which is a Windows application. And the first thing that it does is that it would delete away shadow copy. Now, this is one of the threats of the Maze ransomware, and it's also something that makes it very powerful because once the Maze ransomware starts to attack your endpoint, if you're using any kind of backup solution that leverages on shadow copy, those will be gone, and you are not able to recover them. So the first thing before it starts to encrypt your stuff, it will just delete away shadow copy to ensure that no restoration of the data is possible. So we detect this kind of behaviors at a very early stage before the ransomware behavior exhibits itself. And of course, once the ransomware starts to encrypt your data, this is where we trigger another kind of alert. This is the behavior analysis alert, possible ransomware detected for Maze RW. And if you click on this view alert, you will see the similar kind of information displayed in the previous graph. We have the WMIC that deletes away the shadow copy, but now you have more colors and more shapes onto this graph. So from the Maze ransomware, one of the key things that we can see is that there's this ransomware behavior, and it's trying to encrypt your data. And of course, we do have also in-memory executable. This is another kind of detection. So we actually place a lot of roadblocks in front of the malware. And if it just steps on any one of them, those will trigger, and you will have the recording of everything that happens. And of course, in case of a ransomware behavior, we automatically stopped it so that no human is required to intervene and to respond in a manual fashion. So this is just one example of the behavioral tree that provides you with most of the information. And if you go down below, you have all the events that's recorded down here. And if you just scroll to the last page, you can see that the Maze ransomware matched a protection policy whereby we will terminate the process automatically. And this is done obviously without human intervention. And it provides the kind of automated response that you require in terms of high impact attacks. And let's just go back to the victim machine again, because these two alerts has been blocked already. So there's really nothing that the analyst needs to do. Of course, you can close it as malicious, and the AI at the back end will learn about this and understand what do you mean by malicious or what do you mean by benign, and starts to tailor-made to every organization, detecting things that is out of the norm for that environment. If we go back to the victim machine again, I'm just going to show you very quickly another ransomware, and I've just found this like 10 minutes before the talk. So basically, why do I want to show this is this is the REVO ransomware that creates the headline for Apple 2 days back. So the story is that one of the manufacturers for Apple has been breached, and they suffered the ransomware attack. And I think the attackers are asking for like $50 million or something like that. It's a Taiwanese manufacturer. And it happens that this Taiwanese manufacturer, the name is Quantum, is manufacturing notebooks and PCs for Apple. So of course, Quantum didn't botch, and they didn't reply to the ransom request. And now the REVO attack group is reaching out to Apple to ask for the money and the ransom instead. And looking at such a huge company, I'm pretty sure that you have like, different kinds of organizations, small, big, medium size, different kinds of organizations. But if you look at Quantum as like a huge company, and you know that they have antiviruses, you know that probably have more than one antiviruses, and these security solutions in place to protect that organization of that size, of that value, and it still fails to detect and protect them against such a ransomware attack. So what really is the problem? The problem is what Don mentioned previously, is most of the solutions that's leveraging on traditional technologies, and also we're playing a catching game, right? So if you have a new signature, you need to update it before you're able to get the protection out of it. But at the same time, if you are the first target of the attack, there is no signature to update from. There is no reference, or there is no detection from known attacks, because you're the first victim. It is targeted attack, and you just can't prevent this from happening. So you need a technology that is future-proof, and this is where the REAQTA AI engine comes into play. We do not require any kind of updates. It is capable of detecting the behaviors regardless of whether it is released today or is going to be released tomorrow. The malware is going to be the same. When we look at a malware, it is first time that we look at it. We look at the behaviors of it. If it exhibits the behavior, we don't really care whether it's an old one or a new one. We will detect and we will block them all the same. So we're just going to execute this one. It's going to take some time. And ironically, because this one requires administrator privilege to run, so I'm just going to give it administrator privilege. But if you just imagine the human weakness, right? Imagine that this ransomware tries to run on a PC in Quantum, and somebody just willingly give it the administrator privilege, and it just runs with administrator privilege like any other applications. So human weakness is besides the point. We know that it's always going to be a problem, but besides leveraging on human awareness or security awareness for your stuff, we want to have a solution that is future-proof, that is able to detect the threats, and on top of your antiviruses, that protects the organization to give you that kind of behavioral analysis that you require. So we just have to wait for a while. And if you look at the task manager, let me just see whether it's still running, hopefully. Yep, it will take some time to run. But at the same time, if you look at the dashboard, we do have already some detection on it. So I'll just explain along when we show the different detections that appears on the dashboard. The first thing that you have noticed that this detection is a little bit different from the previous one. This one is a cloud policy. All right, so we do have a cloud intel. So if you sign up with the REAQTA solution, you do have multiple engines for detection and protection. Well, we have the on-premise and on every agent, the AI engine that does the detection in automated format using behavior analysis and also the machine learning algorithms. But we also have the cloud checking. So we have our own cloud intel sources, and we check with those sources to see if any of these matches. And if yes, then what we can do is to basically trigger the alert based on cloud. What do you call that? The Hive Cloud. So if you go to view the alert, you look at it, it's the initial stage of the detection. And it just shows you that the trigger point is this reval, having this hash, and it starts a copy of itself with a different process ID, of course. And we detect the starting of the application based on the knowledge that we have on this application. All right, so if you just wait for a while, and then it will just automatically create the policy, the Hive Cloud will block the process, right? So that's the ransomware detection on different kinds of use cases, online or offline on an air-gap environment. So it really depends on the different need and requirements for every organization. We do have detection that works in every requirements for your customer, be it a totally air-gap environment or online environment, or even a hybrid environment where you have an on-prem server that is taking and serving all your endpoints locally, while you have also roaming endpoints that is able to connect to the same server for the same kind of detection and protection. And of course, going to the threat hunting, which is also another use case that we have for our customers, is besides doing the detection and blocking, there are actually a lot more things to do with our solution, understanding what has been run, what is unauthorized, what potentially you would not know. So if you just ask the simple question, do you know what your neighbor is running at the moment? No, if the answer is no, then the next question is, in such a scenario, how would you expect to detect threats in real time? Now, the keyword is real time, because it doesn't really matter if the threat has been run for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but if it starts to create that impact, the impact is going to be created before you do the detection, and the detection is late. And once the detection is late, you cannot salvage the situation. You cannot revert back to the state before the attack. So we want the detection to be real time, if not near real time. So the question is about visibility, right? So just imagine that you have specific requirements to hunt for specific threats, or even to look at the visibility of the organization. The first thing when you go into the threat hunting page, you are greeted with these three logics, the OR, AND, and NOT. And of course, this provides you with the different capabilities to zoom into what you want to find using the different logics. And also, we do have events that we support. For example, one of the use case could be account lock-on failure. So if you search for account lock-on failure, you can see a bunch of account lock-on failures that potentially could be a brute force. And if you want to zoom into a specific time, maybe I just want to look at 0 hours to 06 hours, where I don't really think anyone will come to work such early. At this early time. So if you see that there's a bunch of account lock-on failures, that may signify that somebody is doing some automated lock-on, and perhaps it's a brute force attack. Another use case could be things like if you have an authorized VPN solution that you use for your organization, and you're just wondering if somebody else uses certain VPN that is not authorized. So one of the key things that you can find could be, things like OpenVPN. So instead of finding the event type, we're going to find things like path. Maybe we just look for if anyone is running a OpenVPN from, let's say, OpenVPN folder. We can do that, and you just click on any of this result. You can see that it is C drive, program files, VPN connect, but I'm not even typing the full string. All right, I'm just typing a partial of the path, and we're able to find that for you in a very quick and response in a very quick manner. So this gives you an idea of who actually runs the application, the endpoint name, the type of events it was involved in. And again, if you click on any of these events, the side panel rolls out, and you can see the details about the application, including the path where it is running from, the user that runs it, and the 3 different hashes. And the prevalence tabs tells you, besides this endpoint, is there any other endpoints that actually runs this before? So that gives you a very good idea of whether this is an isolated case, or maybe you already have this run in certain endpoints or environments that you might not know about. And of course, we're talking about also, sometimes in IT operation, we're looking at not threats, but certain bandwidth throttling applications. If you have one endpoint that uses BitTorrent to download movies, that's fine. But if you have like 500 people that starts to use BitTorrent, that may jam up the network a little bit. And therefore, you might want to, disallow certain applications that does P2P, or maybe BitTorrent downloading of huge files. So if you're just wondering if anyone uses BitTorrent within the environment, one of the key things that you can look for is a sign information. And we're just going to put BitT, because I'm not sure whether BitTorrent is spelled as one word or even a split word, but we can put a partial name to it. And again, with just a click in moments, we're not even talking about 5 seconds. We have the results here. And the endpoint names, again, you click on any of them, you can see that this BitTorrent is signed by BitTorrent Inc. And even our cloud score tells us that this is suspicious, because some of our sources identify this as malicious or a potentially unwanted application. The hashes is here, and the path that runs this application is there. So you can see the name. Also, if anyone else runs the same malware or the same application, that gives you an idea of how many people are using BitTorrent for the matter. So we support over 120 different parameters. Anything that you are looking for, you can think of regarding files, processes, and users. Probably some of these parameters are there. So we are looking at things like the hashes, the IP address, destination, source, the user information, whether the application have a GUI. We have also the file system name and the original file name, the path, the signature information, certificate information, the login information. We have registry information, specific MITRE tactic or techniques. We're looking at WMI information as well. And the list just goes on. And coupling with the 3 different logical operators, it just helps you to zoom into looking at things that you might not think exist in your environment. So that is the visibility. That's the unparalleled visibility that we give you. And you don't have to click on a button and wait for 2 hours for the results to come back. It is just a moment in time. And it gives you that information that you need at your fingertips. And also, let me just maybe use the next 5 or 3 minutes, if I have, to describe about answering the question of what if there is a new behavior. All right, so maybe the behavior analysis kind of solution is not something new to you. You have seen other people talking about it. Some of the vendors also claims that they have such an approach to detect threats. But what if there is a new behavior that is not supported out of the box? There's a new threat, it's a new behavior. We always encountered with such a situation. And traditionally, if you have a new behavior that is exhibited by a new kind of malware, the vendor has to do the R&D, has to release a new version, and eventually it will have to release a patch or even a new version for you to detect this new behavior. But our answer to this is what we call DESTRA. Is a short form for this detection strategy. The detection strategy allows you to basically tell the engine what you want to detect. It's a flexible way of telling the engine to detect specific scenarios that you have. So for example, you may have services creating suspicious scripts or suspicious applications. So we actually use a scripting language called Lua to basically script this behavior and tell the engine that whenever services run, if the process that spins off from services is command prompt or PowerShell, then please raise a alert, and we can give the information that we need to into the alert. And this helps us to detect that kind of scenarios. And of course, the possibility is endless. You can do things like this, which is partially complex, having to understand the parent and child relationship. You can also do things which is very complex, looking out for specific IOCs in specific behaviors. You can also do detection strategy in a very, very simple format, like I just want to know if Notepad runs, right? So this is the use case for you. Whenever we have a process run, we just get the original file name, we match it with the name. If it matches notepad.exe, we'll create an alert. What is the use case for such a thing? Well, thinking out of the box, not just for malicious malware or even suspicious activities detection, we're also looking at what can we do for audit? What can we do for real-time tracking? Right. So we have a customer that actually asks for real-time information whenever WinSCP is run. So WinSCP is an application that does file transfers to servers or endpoint to servers, and they have this WinSCP installed on one particular endpoint, and because this endpoint has access to a very high-value server, that's why we need to understand when is it run. If it's run at, let's say, 10 a.m. in the morning within the working hours, that's fine. But if it starts to run at 2 a.m. in the morning, where we don't really expect people to use the application or the machine, then it becomes suspicious. So therefore, they need to understand this information. So what we do is we just create a detection strategy for them. And whenever a process is created, we just track whether the name is called WinSCP. If yes, then we trigger an alert. And of course, we can make it more complex to look at what is the office hour. And if it's within office hour, we won't trigger an alert. And if it's outside of the office hours, we can trigger an alert. So the possibility is just endless. And with detection strategy, you do not have to wait for vendors, in this case REAQTA, to come out with a detection for the new behavior, because naturally you will have the capabilities to do this yourself, or even coming back to us and we can help you to script this. And within 1 or 2 days, you do have the new kind of detection as per your requirements. All right. So I hope this short demonstration gives you a very good idea of how we do detection, protection, as well as threat hunting and detection strategy. And I'll pass the time back to Tristan. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, Serge, we do have a few. Yeah, the first one would be, what solution would you say is your competition?
Well, there are a lot of solutions out there that claims to do what we do. So we have the traditional antiviruses that claims to have the EDR solution that look at the behavior analysis, but at the end of the day, the main detection is still using antivirus. So for us, we work in a decoupled mode. We do have our own AV as well, but we also have just the EDR portion that can work on top of any other AVs that your customers or yourself might already have. So as such, our competition ranges from traditional AVs to EDR players, including the familiar names. I'm not sure whether it's familiar in South Africa, like CrowdStrike. We have VMware, Carbon Black, and those of that sort.
Okay. Cool. So we've got another one that says, so the solution works without internet connection. I think the question is, in the air-gapped environments, so I think they just want a little bit of elaboration on that.
Yeah. So I've explained that the solution actually can work in different modes. So the most easiest way is we have the server hosted on the cloud, the endpoints connects to the cloud. We also have an air-gapped mode where the server is hosted on-premise and all the local endpoints connect to the local server. In that way, the data doesn't leave your organization, and you are able to manage everything within the local LAN. And of course, the hybrid way is to have the server hosted on premise, but you expose the server to the internet as well. And that's for roaming clients and people working from home, installing the agents, and they're able to connect back to the same server. So you have the same platform and also the same dashboard for governance, as well as to manage the solution and the environment.
Okay, great. Okay, the next one be, does it give an auto response for every situation, or are there cases where it simply stops it and waits for the admin to review?
It's configurable. So by default, we do the detection out of the box. So there is really nothing that you need to do in terms of behavior analysis and detection, because that's done by the AI. And of course, in certain circumstances, you might want to automatically block specific threats, like maybe ransomware. So for that matter, we do have protection policies and blacklists for the analysts to enable and create in order to tailor-make the solution to do detection or protection on certain circumstances, depending on their requirements.
Okay, great. The next one would be there are many concerns over data leaving local countries and crossing borders with some solutions. How does REAQTA handle the data from the endpoints, and where would it be stored?
Yeah. So on this, I think it's the first question about the whether it is able to work in a air-gapped environment. If there is really concern about data leaving your organization, not just the country, then obviously the choice will be to host the server on premise. And but if you do have a more relaxed policy where within South Africa you can host the server anywhere else, as long as it doesn't leave South Africa or your country, then we can choose whatever hosting company that you want. Because for us, it's just a commodity server. We install our services and we're good to go. So there is no proprietary hardware. There is no proprietary components that we need to add in order to make it work.
Okay, great. Thank you. This application uses AI. What happens in the cases where the application misjudges and labels an application as a threat and it's not a threat?
Yep. So I guess you're referring to the AI misjudges. So yep, the AI does a lot of detection based on what are the inputs. And we purposely make the threshold of the AI to be pretty low. The reason is we want to detect more alerts than leaving the chance of a true positive being not detected. And to alerts for false positives, what we do is that once we deploy the solution, there's like a 2 or 3 weeks where the REAQTA engineers together with CRS will be able to help you baseline the solution tailor-made to your environment. And at the end of the process, we will create an environment and the dashboard that is capable of detecting threats that is not seen within the baseline. So any anomalies or any process, suspicious process or malicious process that runs after the baselining period, we will treat that as a detection, a real detection, and obviously a real investigation has to go in. And of course, if we so discover that this is a false positive, we can still whitelist it again. So it's an ongoing process, but the main bulk of the work is the 2 or 3 weeks once we start to deploy within your organization.
Okay, great, thanks. The next one will be, how long do you think legacy AVs will still be relevant?
Well, personally, I think it will still be relevant as long as people thinks that they need such a detection. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, a behavior analysis solution detects once there is a behavior, which means that the malware has to run. And of course, there is also this fear that if the malware runs and for whatever reasons that the EDR solution or the behavioral solution fails to detect it, then we will have a problem, right? So as long as this fear exists in our mind, the AV will still be relevant because the AV will use a pre-execution method to detect common threats. And the pre-execution method doesn't require the malware to run, and that gives people the peace of mind that common threats and common malwares are being taken care of. So yep, as long as you have this fear in your mind, the AV is going to be relevant, and yep, that's the fact.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next one. What is the African support like?
Yep. So we're working with valued partners like CRS to provide in-country support. And of course, we are able to give you the kind of support that you require. It's a matter of, what are the support that you need. And obviously, we're able to work with our partners to cater that support to you.
Sure, and if I can just elaborate on that as well, Tristan, thank you for the question, is that us as CRS, we provide full support for REAQTA. However, if there is something that we perhaps cannot assist with, there is the office based out of the Netherlands that is in the same time zone as us, so we pretty much have the guys from REAQTA Netherlands to lean on, should it be required.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, we have a last question. If no one else has questions, please feel free to ask in the chat box. In terms of overhead, CPU usage and time, is it noticeable when opening a file or application when the AI plays out a process?
Well, the average that we take in terms of resources, we're looking at 1% CPU overhead and less than 20 megabytes of RAM for a normal user. If you're a power user, obviously the number of applications that you run will linearly increase the resources that is going to be taken. But we do not take more than 10% of the RAM in the normal circumstances. So as compared to antiviruses or any other solutions out there, easily take up to 500 or even 600 megabytes of RAM. I've seen antiviruses that you leverage on 1 gigabyte of RAM, and they're still able to work. So the fortunate thing is that we don't take so much resource. And we provide real-time analysis, which is much more lightweight than a scanning solution, if you can imagine.
Yeah, can imagine. That's great. Okay, do we have a baseline that are common threats for all applications? Because with AI, we can be training REAQTA with the wrong common baseline.
We don't really have a common baseline. The reason is basically we're not just, we take a wider perspective of what do you mean by threat. A medicine to someone may be a poison to another. Just quote you an example. If OpenVPN is a valid and legit application, but it doesn't mean that it should be allowed to run in your environment. But OpenVPN could be, freely run in another company's environment, but it doesn't mean that you should allow it. So having that common baselines undermines our solution and just make sure that, unauthorized applications are able to run as well. So therefore, we do not have a common baseline, but rather we will go through the process of baselining for every organizations that deploy our solution.
Okay, great. Please feel free to pose any more questions. However, that was the last one for now. Yep.
Okay, thanks for that, Tristan. So if more questions come up, we do still have a minute or two of everybody's time. But from CRS side, all the speakers, we really do thank you. What you've shown us today is extremely insightful. But even more so, we thank you for attending this. And I'm speaking to all the attendees here. Thank you very much for your time. We really do hope you enjoyed it. Guys, please follow us on social media. Reach out to your account managers. I see that some of you have already reached out to me, so thank you for that. Thank you for posing your questions that we will answer via email after the fact. But nevertheless, you have our contact details. Please reach out, and if for some reason you don't have our contact details or you cannot see them on your screen at the moment, please search us on social media, follow us. We do have a lot of valuable insight to give, and especially with the guys like Don and Serge from REAQTA. Follow the guys. That you will learn more from them than you will learn from most in your life. So if that's it, Tristan, if there's no more questions, thank you very much for your attendance, and we will be closing the call in, let's say, call it 1 minute.
Perfect.